The story of the current wars, the epic showdown between alternating and direct current, cannot be told without first understanding the men behind the machines. Two inventors, two visions of the future, two names that would become legends in their own right, Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla. Though their lives would ultimately intertwine in a dramatic battle over the future of electricity, they began on separate paths in different parts of the world, shaped by radically different experiences and philosophies. To understand the storm that would later erupt between them, we must first return to their origins. Thomas Edison, the relentless tinkerer, Thomas Alva Edison, was born on February 11, 1847, in Milan, Ohio. The youngest of 7 children, Edison was curious from the start. Unlike the image of the child prodigy, Edison struggled in traditional school. His teachers found him inattentive, perhaps even slow. After just 3 months of formal education, his mother, a former teacher, pulled him from school and decided to teach him at home. It turned out to be a turning point. With his mother's support, Edison developed a deep hunger for learning, particularly in the realms of science and mechanics. By the age of 12, Edison was already working. He took a job selling newspapers and candy on the Grand Trunk Railroad. But he didn't just sell goods. He set up a small laboratory in the baggage car where he conducted chemical experiments during downtime. He even published a newspaper on the train. This balance of commerce and curiosity would define his life. In his teens, Edison taught himself telegraphy, a booming technology of the era. His work as a telegraph operator gave him hands-on experience with electrical circuits and communications, skills that would later feed directly into his inventions. Edison was not just an inventor, he was an innovator, a marketer, and most of all, a businessman. He understood that an invention only mattered if it could be produced, sold, and used at scale. His mantra was clear: invention is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration, and he lived by it. By his early 30s, Edison had already invented the phonograph, and his fame was growing. Then came his most iconic invention, the incandescent light bulb. It wasn't the first light bulb ever made, but Edison perfected a version that was practical, long-lasting, and commercially viable. To power his lights, he needed a system, a way to deliver electricity into homes and businesses. This would become the foundation of his direct current, or DC, power network. Nikola Tesla, the visionary outsider. Now let us cross the Atlantic to meet a very different man. Nikola Tesla was born on July 10, 1856, in Smiljan, a small village in what is now Croatia. Unlike Edison, Tesla was a highly gifted student. He could memorize entire books, perform integral calculus in his head, and was fluent in multiple languages. He often claimed he could see inventions fully formed in his mind. He didn't need sketches or prototypes. His brain was his blueprint. Tesla was deeply influenced by his parents. His father was a priest and poet. His mother, though uneducated formally, was an inventor in her own right, crafting tools and mechanical devices for household use. From her, Tesla inherited both creativity and a love for invention. After studying engineering in Austria and working as an electrician in Hungary, Tesla made his way to Paris to work for the Continental Edison Company. There he developed his ideas for an alternating current motor, something he believed could revolutionize how electricity was transmitted. Unlike Edison's direct current, which flowed in only one direction and weakened over distance, Tesla's alternating current reversed direction rapidly, allowing it to travel much farther and more efficiently. In 1884, Tesla set sail for America with little more than a letter of recommendation and a dream. That letter was addressed to Thomas Edison. When worlds collide, Edison and Tesla were at first allies. Tesla was hired to work for Edison shortly after arriving in the United States. At the time, Edison was a towering figure. His Menlo Park lab was buzzing with activity, his name a household staple. For Tesla, the opportunity was promising, but the alliance quickly soured. Tesla was idealistic, driven by pure scientific vision. Edison was pragmatic, motivated by market demands and profits. When Tesla proposed improving Edison's DC system, Edison allegedly brushed him off, famously saying, "If you can do it, I'll give you $50,000. Tesla succeeded, but the reward never came. Edison claimed he had been joking. Tesla quit shortly after, disillusioned and broke. Still, he refused to give up. With the help of investors and later with the backing of industrialist George Westinghouse, Tesla developed his alternating current systems into a real competitor to Edison's DC network. Thus began the infamous war of currents. Two men, two philosophies. In many ways, Edison and Tesla represent two opposing philosophies of science and invention. Edison was the archetype of the gritty, hands-on American inventor. He experimented constantly, often through trial and error, working tirelessly to find practical working solutions. He was also fiercely competitive, even combative, especially when it came to defending his inventions and business interests. Tesla, on the other hand, was the quintessential idealist. He believed in the beauty of theory, the elegance of a well-thought-out system. He was not interested in commercial success in the way Edison was. He wanted to gift the world with limitless free energy. This made him brilliant, but also vulnerable in a world where money and influence often mattered more than ideas alone. The stage is set by the late 1880s. Both men had made names for themselves, Edison as the Wizard of Menlo Park, and Tesla as a rising star with bold ideas that could threaten Edison's electrical empire. The battle lines were drawn. On one side, Edison, entrenched with his DC systems and an established customer base. On the other, Tesla and Westinghouse, offering a cheaper, more efficient AC alternative that could light up cities across continents. The war of currents was no longer a hypothetical debate. It would soon become one of the most dramatic and consequential technological rivalries in modern history, and it all began here, with two very different sparks of genius. The 19th century was a time of restless transformation. Cities were swelling with new populations, factories clanged with industry, and the world teetered between the soot of coal and the promise of clean, controlled electricity. In the heart of this era of invention stood Thomas Edison, a man obsessed not only with innovation, but with reshaping the world itself. In this chapter, we explore how Edison brought the electric light out of scientific journals and laboratories and into everyday life, and why his chosen method, direct current, became the standard, at least for a while. From firelight to filament before electricity, nightfall meant darkness. The only sources of light were gas lamps, oil lanterns, or candles, flickering, dangerous and expensive. Cities like London and New York were dotted with gas lights that burned bright but belched heat, soot, and toxic fumes. The need for a safer, cleaner, and more controllable source of light was not just a matter of comfort, it was a revolution waiting to happen. Scientists and inventors had been tinkering with the idea of electric light since the early 1800s. Humphrey Davy, an English chemist, created the first electric arc lamp in 1802, but it was far too intense and short-lived for everyday use. Dozens of others tried and failed to make something practical. The world needed not just a bulb, but an entire system to power it. Enter Edison. The light bulb moment, not what you think. Let's bust a myth right away. Edison did not invent the light bulb. By the time he began his work on electric lighting in the late 1870s, at least 24 inventors had already demonstrated working light bulbs of one form or another. What Edison did, and did better than anyone else, was make it work for the real world. He experimented tirelessly with filaments, platinum, carbonized bamboo, even beard hair, seeking the material that would glow brightly, resist burning out quickly, and be cheap enough to manufacture. After thousands of tests, he settled on a carbonized paper filament in a vacuum-sealed glass bulb. It lasted for over 1,200 hours, far longer than its predecessors. But Edison knew that a light bulb on its own was useless. He needed a power source, wiring, switches, sockets, meters, and above all, a way to deliver electricity to people's homes. In essence, he had to create an entirely new infrastructure. It would be like inventing the car and the highways at the same time. The birth of the electric utility. In 1882, Edison launched one of the boldest experiments in the history of engineering, the Pearl Street Station, located in Lower Manhattan. It was the world's first commercial central power plant, using steam-powered dynamos, essentially large generators. Edison began delivering direct current electricity to 59 customers in the surrounding area. Each received power for lighting a total of around 400 lamps. Pearl Street was a marvel. When the switch was flipped and the first bulbs lit up the streets and buildings of New York, crowds gasped. Night became day. Electricity became real. From this small station, Edison's dream began to expand. He opened similar systems in Boston, Philadelphia, and London. The Edison Electric Light Company began to scale, laying wires under roads, stringing them across rooftops, and partnering with municipalities to build DC grids in major urban centers. The public was dazzled. Electricity was the future, and Edison was its prophet. Why direct current? Edison's entire system was based on direct current, or DC, where electricity flows in a single direction. DC had some practical advantages. It was simple, reliable, and safe at low voltages. Edison's dynamos produced it naturally, and he had invested heavily in a wide range of DC-based technologies, from meters to motors. But there was a catch. One Edison either ignored or refused to accept. DC could not travel far. The voltage would drop rapidly over distance, meaning that power plants had to be placed within a mile or two of their customers. This worked in densely populated areas like downtown Manhattan, but it made DC impractical for serving wider regions, suburbs, or rural communities. To solve the problem, Edison proposed building dozens or hundreds of small power plants in every city. This was expensive, inefficient, and would soon be challenged by a very different approach. But Edison was undeterred. He was deeply invested, not just financially, but emotionally, in DC. It was the technology he had built his empire around. His electric meters were calibrated for DC. His patents were for DC components. His light bulbs, switches, and fuses were all designed for DC systems. To him, alternating current was an unnecessary complication. Worse, it was dangerous. AC used high voltages and reversed direction many times per second, a concept Edison called unnatural and unsafe. He wasn't entirely wrong. Early AC systems had risks. But Edison's rejection was also rooted in self-interest. If AC caught on, much of what he built would become obsolete. The business of electricity, while Edison was an inventor, he was also a master businessman. He formed partnerships, secured patents, and attracted investors like J.P. Morgan, who saw the commercial potential in electrification. Together, they founded Edison General Electric, a company that would eventually evolve into today's General Electric. Edison also controlled the media narrative. His name was gold. Reporters loved him. He was portrayed as the Wizard of Menlo Park, a lone genius lighting the world with his magical ideas. Publicity was a tool he wielded with skill. He understood that public opinion could shape markets just as much as science. He held exhibitions, invited dignitaries to witness the electric light in action, and even began proposing ideas for electric streetcars, electric meters, and household appliances. But all of this was built upon a brittle foundation. His DC empire was growing, but so were its limitations. In the background, another force was rising, another current, another vision, and another inventor, one who had once worked for Edison, and who was now preparing to challenge him. The calm before the storm. As Edison's electric grid expanded across the urban core of America, he believed he was winning the future. The wires had been laid, the lights were on, and cities gleamed with his creation. But outside the glow of DC's reach, a different solution was taking form. One that could travel hundreds of miles. One that could power not just cities but entire countries. And it was being championed by a man who believed electricity was not just a commodity, but a gift to all of humanity. Nikola Tesla was not done yet. While Thomas Edison stood at the center of a glowing world, he helped electrify. Far from the bustling confidence of New York's financial elite and the coal-fired dynamos of Pearl Street, a different force was quietly gathering. One that would challenge Edison's dominance, not through brute business savvy, but with pure, almost ethereal ingenuity. His name was Nikola Tesla, and he was unlike anyone the world of science had ever seen. This chapter dives deep into the mysterious genius of Tesla, his arrival in America, his revolutionary ideas, and the birth of the system that would ultimately power the world. Alternating current, or AC. A brain born of lightning, Tesla's fascination with electricity began early. As a child growing up in the Austrian Empire, modern-day Croatia, he was haunted by vivid visions and bursts of insight. He saw intricate machinery in his mind's eye, so detailed and dynamic he could test and refine inventions entirely in his imagination before building them. He once described seeing flashes of light so intense they blinded him, accompanied by sudden surges of inspiration. Even as a boy, Tesla felt connected to unseen forces he believed he would someday harness. Tesla's mind was tuned differently. He could memorize entire books, speak multiple languages, and calculate complex math problems instantly. He was hypersensitive to sounds, lights, and even electromagnetic fields. What others called madness, he considered perception. To him, the universe was a puzzle, and electricity was the key to unlocking its secrets. After studying at the Austrian Polytechnic in Graz and working as an engineer in Budapest and Paris, Tesla found himself increasingly obsessed with a problem few others were thinking about: how to transmit power efficiently over long distances. Direct current, which was just beginning to light up a few neighborhoods in Europe and the US, could barely travel more than a mile. Tesla was convinced there had to be a better way. He dreamed of a system that would allow electricity to flow in waves back and forth, alternating its direction, like the tides or vibrations of sound. He called it alternating current. Arrival in America, a nation of promises and promoters. In 1884, Tesla arrived in New York City with 4 cents in his pocket, a bag of personal notes, and a letter of recommendation addressed to Thomas Edison himself. That letter, from Charles Batchelor, Edison's European associate, famously said, "I know 2 great men, and you are one of them. The other is this young man." Impressed, Edison hired Tesla to work on improving his direct current generators. For a time, Tesla toiled quietly in Edison's orbit, applying his unique mathematical mind to DC motors and circuits. But Tesla wasn't interested in incremental improvements. He had a grander vision. He believed that AC, despite being more complex, was the future of electricity. According to Tesla, Edison offered him $50,000 to solve a series of design problems with DC equipment. Tesla succeeded. When he asked for the promised reward, Edison reportedly laughed and said, "Tesla, you don't understand our American humor." Whether true or apocryphal, the story illustrates the fundamental divide between them. Tesla saw science as a higher calling. Edison saw it as a business. Disillusioned, Tesla quit. He spent the next months digging ditches for a living, literally working for a company that was installing Edison's DC power lines. For a man who could see electromagnetic fields in his mind, it was a humiliating fall. But in the ditch, Tesla was still dreaming. The AC motor that changed everything. Tesla knew that in order for alternating current to succeed, he needed a motor that could run on AC. Most motors at the time only worked with DC, because they depended on a continuous one-directional flow of electricity. Then, in a moment of staggering brilliance, Tesla designed what would become one of the most important inventions in history, the induction motor. It used a rotating magnetic field to spin the rotor without direct contact or commutators. Less friction, less maintenance, more efficiency. And crucially, it worked seamlessly with alternating current. With this invention, Tesla didn't just propose a new way to transmit electricity, he created a practical working system for using it. That was the turning point. In 1887, he presented his motor and AC transmission system to a group of engineers. One of them was so impressed, he helped connect Tesla with George Westinghouse, a Pittsburgh industrialist who had already begun experimenting with AC. Tesla meets Westinghouse. The perfect partnership. George Westinghouse was Edison's opposite. While Edison clung to DC and sought to dominate the electric utility market, Westinghouse was pragmatic and forward-thinking. He recognized Tesla's AC system not as a threat to Edison, but as an opportunity to build something better. In 1888, Westinghouse bought the rights to Tesla's patents for $60,000, a fortune at the time, and agreed to pay ongoing royalties based on the amount of electricity generated using Tesla's AC system. It was an unprecedented deal. For Tesla, it was validation. For Westinghouse, it was a strategic move in what was about to become a full-scale war. Together, Tesla and Westinghouse began building an infrastructure for alternating current. They developed transformers to step up voltage for transmission and step it down for home use. AC could now be sent over miles and miles of wire, something DC could not do. With the AC motor, the system was complete: generation, transmission, and application. Suddenly, Edison was no longer the only name in electricity. Tesla's vision of the future. But Tesla's mind stretched far beyond lighting homes or running motors. He dreamed of a world powered wirelessly, a global system of energy and information. He envisioned towers that could beam power through the atmosphere, vehicles that moved without fuel, and machines that tapped into the Earth's natural electromagnetic fields. He even hinted at ideas that seemed like science fiction: broadcasting images across distances, harnessing solar energy, and transmitting messages across the globe in an instant. Today, many of Tesla's predictions sound eerily like modern-day radio, Wi-Fi, and remote communication. While Edison was lighting cities, Tesla was imagining how to light the entire planet, without wires, without pollution, and possibly without cost. These dreams would eventually become his downfall, as he overestimated the world's readiness and underestimated the capital required. But at this moment, at the dawn of the current wars, Tesla's ideas were catching fire. The coming conflict. By the early 1890s, the stage was set. Edison, entrenched and powerful, controlled the public narrative and most of the urban market with DC. Tesla, now backed by Westinghouse, was preparing to roll out an AC network that could reach further, cost less, and power more. The fight was no longer theoretical. It was now about winning contracts, dominating public opinion, and changing infrastructure across the entire United States. Tesla knew he had the better system. Edison feared he did, and what followed next was one of the most aggressive, bitter, and dangerous technological rivalries in history. The war of currents was about to begin, and the world would never be the same. By the early 1890s, electricity was no longer a curiosity. It was a business, a battlefield, and a symbol of progress. But beneath the buzz of glowing filaments and humming wires, a fierce rivalry was reaching a boiling point. At its center were two competing visions: Thomas Edison's direct current DC and Nikola Tesla's alternating current AC, the latter championed by industrialist George Westinghouse. This wasn't just a technical debate, it was a brutal, calculated war. Contracts were up for grabs. Cities were choosing sides, and public opinion was the battlefield where the war would be won or lost. To Edison, AC wasn't just competition, it was a threat to everything he had built, and so he began a campaign unlike any the public had seen before, one fueled by fear, spectacle, and shocking theatrics. The stakes: powering America. By 1890, electricity was becoming essential. Urban populations were booming. Factories needed reliable power. Streetlights promised safer nights. Governments and wealthy private clients were eager to electrify everything from subway tunnels to hotels. Whoever controlled this future would shape the infrastructure of modern civilization. The stakes weren't just monetary, they were generational. The victor would supply the grid that would run America's homes, cities, and industries for centuries. On paper, Tesla's AC system was superior. It could transmit electricity over vast distances using high-voltage lines, then safely reduce the voltage at the point of use. DC, on the other hand, lost power quickly and required expensive, localized generators placed every mile or so. Yet Edison had a head start. He had the trust of the public, connections with financiers like J.P. Morgan, and control over many of the country's early electric utilities. He would not let go easily. The fear campaign begins. Edison knew that winning a scientific debate wouldn't be enough. The public didn't understand voltage, resistance, or magnetic fields. What they did understand was fear, and that's what Edison gave them. He began a calculated media campaign to paint AC as deadly and irresponsible. He publicly called it a menace to human life and said it would lead to widespread deaths. He pressured lawmakers to restrict the use of AC in populated areas and funded misleading pamphlets that warned of instantaneous electrocution. But Edison didn't stop at words. He turned to demonstrations, horrific, theatrical, and designed to shock the public. Electrocuting animals. A dark chapter in one of the most disturbing parts of the current war. Edison's team, particularly his associate Harold P. Brown, began publicly electrocuting animals using alternating current. The events were staged under the guise of scientific testing, but the message was clear: AC kills. Stray dogs, calves, and even horses were electrocuted at public exhibitions. Crowds were invited to watch. The press covered it in lurid detail. In 1903, after the war had technically ended, perhaps the most infamous execution took place. A circus elephant named Topsy, deemed dangerous after killing a trainer, was sentenced to death. Edison's team filmed the electrocution using AC. The footage, titled "Electrocuting an Elephant," was widely distributed. Though Edison's direct involvement is debated, some historians argue he had stepped away by then. The campaign clearly bore his strategic fingerprints. Create a direct emotional link in the public's mind between AC and death. The invention of the electric chair. If animal executions weren't enough, Edison supported an even more dramatic weapon in his war against AC, the electric chair. In 1888, as states considered more humane alternatives to hanging, Edison saw an opportunity. He encouraged the use of alternating current in the first electric chair, hoping to associate his rival's technology with death. He even lent equipment and advice to the executioners. The first use of the electric chair in 1890, powered by AC, was a gruesome failure. The prisoner, William Kemmler, did not die instantly. The process had to be repeated, leaving his body charred and smoking. The press was horrified. Edison's plan was working. AC had become associated with death and danger, even if it was technically no more hazardous than DC when handled properly. Tesla and Westinghouse were incensed but struggled to counter the fear narrative. Science alone could not match the emotional power of a public execution. Westinghouse fights back. George Westinghouse, more grounded and pragmatic than the idealistic Tesla, began countering Edison's smear campaign by doing what businessmen do best: winning contracts. He undercut Edison's prices, offered complete AC systems, and convinced municipalities that AC was the future. Tesla's patents allowed Westinghouse to offer a more versatile, scalable system, capable of powering cities and far-flung rural communities alike. Despite Edison's best efforts, AC was catching on. In 1893, Westinghouse landed a critical contract, powering the world's Columbian Exposition in Chicago. This was the moment that turned the tide. The Columbian Exposition, lighting the future. The 1893 World's Fair in Chicago was the largest public event in American history at the time. It marked the 400th anniversary of Columbus's arrival and was a showcase of technology, art, and culture. When the fair's organizers needed electricity to power its massive pavilions and thousands of light bulbs, both Edison's company and Westinghouse competed for the contract. But Westinghouse, using Tesla's AC system, won thanks to a lower bid and a more efficient design. The result was spectacular. When President Grover Cleveland flipped the switch, over 100,000 light bulbs illuminated the fairgrounds. Crowds gasped. It was like stepping into the future. The exposition became known as the White City, and for many, it was their first glimpse of the power of AC. Tesla himself gave lectures and demonstrations at the fair, showing how AC could safely pass through his body to light a lamp, or how coils could create wireless sparks. He became a sensation. AC had arrived, not just as a theory or a prototype, but as a visible, brilliant reality. The turning point, Niagara Falls. Even with the fair's success, the final victory came a year later, when Westinghouse was awarded the contract to build a hydroelectric power station at Niagara Falls, the most ambitious energy project in the world. Tesla had long dreamed of harnessing the natural power of the falls. With his polyphase AC system, it became possible. When the Niagara plant went online in 1896, it sent electricity over 20 miles to Buffalo, New York. The achievement stunned the world. Newspapers proclaimed it the electrical triumph of the century. From that point forward, the argument was over. Tesla's alternating current had proven it could power cities, factories, and homes safely, efficiently, and over vast distances. Edison's DC system, despite its early success, was left behind. Edison's defeat and Tesla's legacy. In 1892, Edison's own company merged with its rival to form General Electric, ironically, a company that soon adopted AC technology. Edison had lost the current war, and while he remained a respected inventor, his grip on the electric future had slipped away. Tesla, on the other hand, should have become the wealthiest man in the world. But he had signed away his royalties to Westinghouse to save the company during a financial crisis, a gesture of loyalty that cost him billions. Still, Tesla's vision had won. Alternating current became the backbone of the modern power grid. Today, nearly every electrical outlet in the world runs on principles Tesla developed. The war that lit the world, the war of currents, wasn't just about light bulbs or electrical systems, it was about ideas. One side favored control, ownership, and slow, incremental progress. The other dreamed of power for all, free-flowing, infinite and open. It was ugly. It was brilliant. It was tragic. And it changed the world forever. The war may have ended, but for Tesla, the dream had only just begun. By the late 19th century, America stood on the brink of transformation. Counties were expanding at unprecedented rates. Industry was booming, but if the future was to be truly electric, the country needed more than demonstrations, exhibitions, and heated debates. It needed a model that could scale, a power system that could sustain modern civilization. That model was born at a natural wonder, Niagara Falls. In this chapter, we explore how Nikola Tesla and George Westinghouse turned the thundering waters of Niagara into the engine of the electrical age, how a bold idea became reality, and how the success of this project changed not only the outcome of the current war, but the shape of the modern world. A dream carved in water. For centuries, Niagara Falls had awed and inspired. Explorers, tourists, engineers, and poets alike were drawn to its sheer force. Billions of gallons of water plummeted over its edge every day, an unstoppable, raw demonstration of nature's power. By the mid-1800s, the idea of harnessing Niagara's energy was already circulating. Early efforts to tap into the falls included water wheels and primitive canals. A few mills used mechanical power driven directly by diverted water, but the dream of transmitting that energy to distant cities remained out of reach. What Niagara represented wasn't just local industry, it was the possibility of clean, renewable, and large-scale electricity. If someone could figure out how to convert the falls into electrical energy and send it efficiently over long distances, they could change the world. That someone turned out to be Nikola Tesla. The Niagara Falls Power Project, a test of AC. In 1893, the Niagara Falls Power Company awarded the contract to George Westinghouse to build the first large-scale hydroelectric power station using Tesla's alternating current system. This decision came after years of bitter debate and international proposals. Thomas Edison had lobbied hard to use his direct current system, but AC had proven itself with the success of the Chicago World's Fair. Still, the stakes at Niagara were unlike anything before. The engineers were not lighting an exposition or powering a few blocks. They were attempting to send electricity over 20 miles to Buffalo, New York. The transmission distance, the volume of power required, and the cost of failure made it the most ambitious electrical project ever undertaken. Tesla's polyphase AC system, with its rotating magnetic field and transformers, was the only design capable of handling such a challenge. Construction began, and the world watched, engineering the future. The Niagara station was a marvel of engineering. Massive canals were dug to divert water into underground conduits. These flows spun giant turbines, which then powered Tesla-designed AC generators, some of the largest ever built. Each generator produced 5,000 horsepower. The current was stepped up in voltage using transformers, another Tesla innovation, and sent down power lines toward Buffalo. On November 16, 1896, the switch was flipped. Niagara roared to life. Buffalo lit up. For the first time in history, a major city was powered by electricity generated over 20 miles away by water. The success of the project wasn't just technical, it was symbolic. It marked the beginning of modern electric utility systems and validated everything Tesla had fought for. The world responds. The Niagara success sent shockwaves through the world's industrial and engineering communities. It was hailed as the electrical triumph of the century. The press treated it as a monumental achievement, and soon other cities and countries began commissioning AC power stations modeled after Niagara: Berlin, London, Tokyo, Buenos Aires. Niagara was no longer just a waterfall, it was a blueprint for the 20th century. Tesla, once dismissed as an eccentric dreamer, was suddenly regarded as a visionary engineer. Newspapers called him a genius. Crowds gathered to hear him speak. He was celebrated not only for his technical brilliance, but for daring to imagine a world that others couldn't yet see. Yet beneath the praise, Tesla remained conflicted. While AC had triumphed, and his inventions had proven indispensable, the commercial rewards largely went to others. The royalty that wasn't Tesla's original deal with Westinghouse included royalties based on the amount of AC power generated, a deal that, with the success of Niagara and the nationwide adoption of AC, would have made him one of the richest men on Earth. But during the financial panic of the early 1890s, Westinghouse's company had been on the brink of collapse. To save it, Tesla made a fateful decision. He tore up his contract and relinquished his future royalties. He reportedly told Westinghouse, "You have been my friend. You believed in me when no one else did. You have stood by me. Here is your contract. I will tear it to pieces, and you will no longer have to pay me anything." Westinghouse survived. The AC revolution marched on, but Tesla had sacrificed his financial future for the greater good, a choice that would haunt him for the rest of his life. From innovation to infrastructure, Niagara marked the turning point from the experimental era of electricity to the age of infrastructure. Power lines, substations, and transformers became the arteries of a new industrial body. Factories ran longer. Homes lit up at night. Streetcars expanded the reach of cities. Alternating current, once scorned as dangerous and unproven, became the global standard. Even Edison's own company, now part of General Electric, adopted AC. Tesla's inventions now formed the skeleton of the modern power grid, a system so vast and reliable, we forget it was once the stuff of radical theory and near impossible engineering. A monument to a vision at Niagara, a statue of Tesla now stands, gazing out over the roaring waters. Tourists take photos, unaware that the very lights in their cameras and the screens in their hands owe a silent debt to the man who made it all possible. Tesla's dream had always been to provide clean, limitless energy to the world. With Niagara, he came closer than anyone before or since. It wasn't yet wireless, and it wasn't yet free, but it was real, and it was working. In many ways, the project was the culmination of Tesla's life's work. He had taken nature's raw power and bent it to human will, not with brute force, but with harmonics, resonance, and invisible waves. It was the first and perhaps last time the world would fully understand and celebrate his genius. After Niagara, Tesla's attention soon drifted beyond hydroelectric dams and power stations. He began to focus on his next great dream: wireless transmission of energy, global communication, and even interplanetary signals. While Niagara was a triumph, it was also a fork in the road. The world now had the power it craved, but Tesla was already imagining what came next. The thunder of Niagara's Falls had barely faded when Nikola Tesla set his sights on something even more audacious: wireless power. He had conquered the current war, helped electrify a continent, and proven alternating current could light the world. But to Tesla, wires were still chains, physical restraints on what should be a fluid, limitless force. Tesla didn't just want to supply power, he wanted to transmit it through the air, freely, cleanly, and globally. He wanted to build a system that could send not only electricity, but information, wireless communication, long before the invention of modern radio. It was to be the next revolution, and he would lead it. But this new dream would push Tesla to the limits of science, money, and sanity. And while his vision was ahead of its time, it would become the turning point where genius met the edge of obsession. The seeds of a wireless world. Tesla's belief in wireless transmission wasn't a sudden leap. It was the natural extension of his discoveries with alternating current, electromagnetic resonance, and high-frequency waves. As early as the 1890s, Tesla was conducting experiments in Colorado Springs that defied belief. He built enormous Tesla coils, towering, humming devices that created bolts of artificial lightning tens of feet long. Locals reported sparks flying from the ground when he powered them on. Horses refused to go near his lab. Lights lit up wirelessly in nearby homes. Tesla wasn't just testing, he was proving a concept. He believed the Earth itself could conduct electrical signals, a natural medium for broadcasting power and information across vast distances. His notes spoke of transmitting energy around the planet's surface like a conductor, tapping into what he described as the natural resonant frequency of the Earth. To Tesla, this wasn't magic. It was physics waiting to be unlocked. The vision of Wardenclyffe, Tesla's most ambitious project, would rise in Shoreham, Long Island in 1901. With funding from J.P. Morgan, yes, the same financier who had once backed Edison, Tesla began building what would be known as the Wardenclyffe Tower. This was no ordinary radio tower. It stood 187 feet high, topped with a 68-foot copper dome, and plunged 120 feet into the ground. Tesla envisioned it as a global wireless transmission station, capable of sending messages, images, and energy across the Atlantic and beyond. He told Morgan that it would revolutionize communications. Secretly, Tesla intended something even greater: wireless electricity delivered freely to every home, ship, and factory on Earth. Morgan, ever the businessman, asked, "Where do I put the meter?" When Tesla couldn't give a profitable answer, the money stopped. A race lost to Marconi, as Tesla was pouring his soul and dwindling funds into Wardenclyffe. Another name was rising: Guglielmo Marconi. Using principles Tesla had already published, Marconi managed in 1901 to send the first transatlantic wireless signal. It was a historic feat, and one that earned Marconi the spotlight, and eventually the 1909 Nobel Prize. Tesla was furious. He claimed Marconi had stolen his work. He was right to an extent. The US Patent Office had originally denied Marconi's patents for infringing on Tesla's, but with financial backing from powerful allies like Thomas Edison and Andrew Carnegie, Marconi eventually prevailed. The press crowned him the father of radio. Tesla would spend the rest of his life trying to reclaim credit, culminating in a 1943 Supreme Court ruling, ironically after Tesla's death, that recognized his precedence. But by then, the damage was done. Marconi had won the moment. Tesla had lost the world's attention. The fall of Wardenclyffe by 1906, Wardenclyffe was silent. Tesla's funds had dried up. JP Morgan had pulled out, wary of a system he could not monetize. Without investment, Tesla couldn't complete the station or prove its power. He began to spiral. He borrowed money against his patents. He promised new breakthroughs, many of which never came. He began speaking of alien signals, death rays, and invisible shields. The world stopped listening. Wardenclyffe, once a monument to the future, fell into decay. In 1917, the tower was dismantled and sold for scrap to pay Tesla's debts. The dream of global wireless power, real or not, had collapsed. Unius on the edge, Tesla's later years were marked by solitude, poverty, and eccentricity. He wandered New York streets in a threadbare coat, feeding pigeons in Bryant Park. He lived in hotel rooms, often unpaid. He claimed to have invented weapons of unimaginable power, devices that could destroy armies or communicate with Mars. Was he lying, delusional, or simply too far ahead for the world to understand? The truth may lie somewhere in between. What's certain is that Tesla never stopped believing. In his writings, he described visions of a planet linked by invisible energy, where information traveled instantly and machines worked without fuel. He described a future of automation, clean energy, and wireless everything, a world we now recognize as our own. Tesla's downfall wasn't his lack of vision, it was that his ideas required a world that didn't yet exist, and a financial system that only rewarded what could be owned, measured, and sold. Legacy in the wires and beyond. Though Wardenclyffe failed, Tesla's wireless experiments laid the groundwork for radio, radar, and modern telecommunications. His concepts inspired generations of engineers. His name would later grace one of the most revolutionary electric car companies of the 21st century. Today, we are surrounded by what Tesla imagined: wireless communication, remote transmission of power, and a global network of electricity and data. In a way, his dream came true, not through one tower, but through billions of devices. Tesla wanted to give the world free, wireless energy. The world said no, but in the end, it took his blueprint anyway. By the early 20th century, the war of the currents had long been decided. Alternating current, the system once ridiculed and attacked, had become the global standard. But while Nikola Tesla faded into obscurity, another man was securing his place in the annals of history: Thomas Edison. Despite losing the technical war, Edison won something just as powerful, perhaps more so: the public narrative. Through strategic media control, relentless invention, and savvy business moves, Edison became not just an inventor, but a symbol. He was the embodiment of the American dream, the Wizard of Menlo Park, and the man who had brought light to the world. This chapter explores how Edison crafted a lasting legacy while Tesla struggled to survive. How business, branding, and control of the story became Edison's final and lasting triumph. From inventor to institution, while Tesla was experimenting in solitude and spiraling financially, Edison was transforming himself from a prolific inventor into a full-fledged industrial mogul. After the defeat of direct current, Edison pivoted, founding companies, buying others, and eventually helping to form General Electric, one of the largest corporations in the world. Though Edison no longer played a major role in electrical systems, the Edison name stayed front and center. Every new appliance, light bulb, or power plant became part of the Edison mythos. His name was printed on patents, etched into company logos, and burned into the memory of a growing public. Unlike Tesla, Edison understood the power of media and marketing. He gave interviews, posed for photos, published books, and curated his image carefully. He was the tireless inventor, the problem solver, the man who slept in his lab and ate with his tools. This wasn't just self-promotion, it was legacy building. Hollywood and the history books. Edison didn't stop at electricity. He moved into motion pictures, phonographs, and consumer electronics. His early work in film, through the Edison Manufacturing Company, helped shape what would become Hollywood. He was creating not just technology, but culture. As film and newspapers became the primary sources of information in the early 20th century, Edison made sure his name remained synonymous with invention. Schools taught about him. Textbooks hailed his contributions. The light bulb became his crown jewel, an invention he improved upon, but did not invent. Yet few remembered Joseph Swan or Hiram Maxim. Edison's name stuck. By contrast, Tesla's contributions were complex, technical, and often invisible. People could see a light bulb. They couldn't see electromagnetic resonance or polyphase motors. Tesla had given the world alternating current, yet it was Edison whose name became associated with electricity. Why? Because Edison controlled the story. The cost of isolation. Tesla never built a media empire. He gave speeches, wrote articles, and made headlines for his dazzling experiments, but he never surrounded himself with publicists, editors, or protégés. He was not a businessman. He refused to patent many of his later ideas and rejected commercial partnerships that might have preserved his influence. By the 1910s, while Edison was enjoying national fame, Tesla was bouncing between unpaid hotel rooms, chasing lost dreams. His later inventions, wireless power, the death ray earthquake machines, were too speculative for investors and too strange for the public. He became a myth, but not a hero. Edison versus Tesla. In death, Thomas Edison died in 1931, mourned by a nation. President Hoover requested that Americans dim their lights for a minute in tribute. Thousands attended his funeral. Museums, libraries, and foundations were built in his honor. Nikola Tesla died in 1943, alone in a hotel room in New York City. He had no money, no patents to his name, and no headlines. His body was discovered by a maid. For years, his contributions remained in the shadows of Edison's myth. It wasn't until decades later, through biographies, documentaries, and the rise of the internet, that Tesla's name began to resurface. Engineers, historians, and tech enthusiasts rediscovered his brilliance. They began to question the narratives they'd been taught. What they found was a man whose ideas had built the modern world, but who had been pushed aside by a system that favored profit over vision. The modern revival of Tesla today. Tesla is a cultural icon. His name graces a cutting-edge electric car company. Statues have been erected in his honor, from Belgrade to Silicon Valley. Books, films, and games have reimagined him as a tragic genius, a misunderstood prophet, and the true father of electricity. In contrast, Edison's reputation has been re-examined. His aggressive business tactics, the smearing of competitors, and his use of animal executions to discredit AC have cast shadows over his legend. This shift in public perception is not just historical correction. It's a deeper debate about what we value. Do we celebrate the one who markets the invention, or the one who imagines it? The one who patents and profits, or the one who dreams without boundaries? Legacy is the final battlefield. In the end, Tesla and Edison represent two sides of innovation. Edison, the practical genius, relentless, industrial, and profit-driven. Tesla, the visionary mystic, brilliant, generous, and often naive. The current war was won by Tesla's technology, but the war for memory was won by Edison, at least for a time. Now, as the world embraces renewable energy, wireless connectivity, and AI-driven systems, Tesla's ideas are more relevant than ever. We live in a world shaped by both men, by Edison's infrastructure and Tesla's imagination. And in that world, the real battle is not whose name history remembers, but whose vision continues to shape the future. The battle between Tesla and Edison, the legendary current war, was more than a clash of technologies. It was a fight for the future, for how humanity would harness energy, power cities, and connect the world. By the early 20th century, Alternating current had clearly won the war. The system Tesla championed lit homes, powered factories, and flowed through an ever-expanding grid. Edison's direct current would survive only in niche applications. But while the war was over, the story was far from finished. After the war, the rise of the electric age, the victory of AC electricity, ushered in the electric age. Factories hummed with machines. Electric streetcars carried millions. Refrigerators, radios, and light bulbs became household staples. The infrastructure built on Tesla's innovations, transformers, induction motors, long-distance transmission lines, became the backbone of modern civilization. Cities became brighter, cleaner, and more connected. Life changed dramatically, and yet this immense progress came with challenges. New frontiers and new battles. In the decades following the current war, the energy landscape evolved but kept the echoes of the conflict alive. Electric utilities grew into giant monopolies, and the tension between public good and private profit intensified. For years, debates raged over how electricity should be produced and distributed. Coal-fired plants dominated, creating pollution and dependence on fossil fuels. The dream of clean energy, the one Tesla hinted at with Niagara and wireless power, remained unfulfilled. Meanwhile, new technologies emerged: radio, television, telecommunications, and eventually the internet, all building on Tesla's wireless principles. Tesla's vision. In the 21st century today, Tesla's dreams resonate more strongly than ever. The rise of wireless communication, smart grids, and renewable energy sources echoes his vision of a world connected by invisible waves and clean power. Electric vehicles, solar farms, and wind turbines are transforming the grid, bringing us closer to the kind of free, sustainable energy Tesla imagined. Companies named after Tesla lead the charge in innovation, symbolizing a renewed appreciation for his genius and foresight. Lessons from the current war. The war between Tesla and Edison teaches us more than just who invented what. It reminds us that technology alone doesn't decide the future. Business, politics, public perception, and money play huge roles. Tesla's story warns of the dangers facing brilliant ideas in the face of commercial interests. Edison's story shows the power of persistence, adaptation, and control of narrative. Together they show that progress is never simple or clean, but messy, contested, and deeply human. The future, where electricity meets imagination as we face climate change, energy crises, and a digital revolution. The questions posed by the current war are more urgent than ever. How do we balance innovation and profit? How do we ensure energy is clean, accessible, and fair? How do we harness new technologies without repeating past mistakes? Tesla's legacy urges us to dream bigger, to imagine a world where energy flows freely and powers humanity's greatest potential. Edison's legacy reminds us that making those dreams real requires grit, strategy, and sometimes compromise. The current war is over, but the war for a better energy future has only just begun. Closing thoughts. Nikola, Tesla, and Thomas Edison were rivals, yes, but they were also collaborators in the story of human progress. Two men whose ideas, conflicts, and triumphs shaped the world we live in today. From the sparks of Niagara Falls to the wireless signals of tomorrow, their currents still flow, sometimes in opposition, sometimes in harmony, lighting the path forward. And as we plug into the future, we carry both their legacies with us.